Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that somewhere along the way, you quietly walked away from yourself. Not in a dramatic moment, not in a life-changing event, but slowly, silently, over years, through every unspoken no, every agreement made just to avoid conflict, every moment you smiled when your heart screamed otherwise. What if the greatest betrayal is not what others do to us, but what we do to ourselves to survive? Today we're exploring a question most people never dare to ask. Why do we abandon who we truly are? And more importantly, how do we come back? Stay with me, because this journey might explain why you feel disconnected, restless, or strangely empty, even when your life looks fine. From the moment we are born, we are social beings. We crave love, safety, belonging. And so, almost instinctively, we learn to adapt, to become what others want us to be. At first, it's innocent. You laugh when they laugh. You stay quiet when they frown. You're praised when you're agreeable. So you learn to hide the messy parts of yourself. The anger, the confusion, the questions that don't have easy answers. But over time, that hiding becomes habit. The more we tailor ourselves to be accepted, the more fragmented we become. And without realizing it, we begin to drift from our inner truth, from our instincts, from the unpolished, raw, and real parts of who we are. We don't mean to betray ourselves, we do it to survive, to belong, to be loved. But there's a cost, and it's often paid in silence. Carl Jung called it the persona, the mask we wear in public, not out of deception, but out of necessity. It helps us play our role in society. It helps us function. But problems arise when we mistake the mask for the self, when the applause of others feels more real than our own voice, when our curated identity becomes more comfortable than our actual needs. Have you ever felt exhausted after being around certain people? That exhaustion is the cost of performance. That's your true self suffocating behind the persona. And the longer we wear the mask, the harder it is to remember who we were without it. We say things we don't believe. We chase goals that don't excite us. We nod in conversations that drain us. Not because we're liars, but because somewhere deep inside, we fear that if we show who we truly are, we'll be left alone. So instead we leave ourselves. Now let's go deeper. Jung introduced another concept that's even more uncomfortable: the shadow. If the persona is what we show, the shadow is what we hide. Every suppressed truth, every abandoned dream, every time you swallowed your voice, dimmed your light, or told yourself, that's not realistic, that's where the shadow grows. It contains not only what's ugly or shameful, but what's powerful, vibrant, and deeply real. But here's the paradox. The more we deny the shadow, the more it controls us. It leaks through sarcasm, through jealousy, through resentment, through self-sabotage. And so we stay stuck, living lives that look okay on the outside, but feel hollow on the inside. We wonder, why am I not fulfilled? Why do I feel like something's missing? Because the truth is, something is missing. You. There comes a moment, sometimes in your 20s, sometimes in your 50s, when the disconnection becomes unbearable. It may look like burnout, a breakup, a midlife crisis, or just a quiet sense of dread you can't quite explain. You wake up and think, I don't know who I am anymore. And that moment, while terrifying, is sacred, because it's in that rupture that something deeper begins to stir. Not your ego, not your ambition, but your soul. It asks, what do I actually want? What do I believe in without anyone else's voice in my head? This moment isn't a breakdown, it's a call home. So how do we come back to ourselves? Not through self-improvement, not through reinventing who we are, but through remembering who we've always been, beneath the conditioning. Here's the truth, the real: you never left. You just stopped listening. Coming back means saying no when you mean it, even if your voice shakes. Feeling your feelings without numbing or apologizing. Noticing what lights you up, and moving toward it. Sitting in silence, long enough for your inner voice to rise. It means grieving the years you spent being someone you're not, but also forgiving yourself, because you did what you had to do to survive. You're not broken. You were just exiled from your own truth. Now, it's time to return. To live authentically is not easy. It means risking disapproval. It means facing parts of yourself you've long ignored. It means letting go of who you were told to be, to become who you are. But here's the quiet miracle. The moment you return to yourself, the world around you begins to shift. You attract people who see the real you. You find meaning in things that once felt empty. You begin to trust your instincts again. You stop performing and start living. Because true freedom isn't doing whatever you want, it's having nothing to hide. So let me ask you, what part of you have you left behind? And what would it look like to come home? If this resonated with you, take a moment, not to rush into answers, but to sit with the question. Because the most powerful transformation doesn't begin with a plan. It begins with the simple decision to no longer abandon yourself. You might wonder, if returning to yourself feels so liberating, why don't more people do it? Why do we resist it, even sabotage it? Because the self we abandoned is not just tender and wise, it's also raw, untamed, unpredictable. To reclaim it means facing the truths we've buried, the rage we've suppressed, the loneliness we've numbed, the desires we've judged, and the dreams we've labeled unrealistic because someone else couldn't see them. It means rewriting your identity, not to please others, but to be honest with yourself. And honesty is terrifying, because once you admit who you really are, you can no longer hide behind excuses. You'll have to act, change, risk. And for many, it's easier to stay asleep than to wake up to that kind of responsibility. But what's the cost of staying asleep? A life where you always feel like a stranger in your own skin. Let's be even more honest. There are forces outside you, very real ones, that benefit from your self-abandonment. A disconnected person is easier to manipulate. You buy things to feel whole. You chase status to feel worthy. You compare yourself endlessly, thinking fulfillment is always one step away. A person who's forgotten themselves is always looking for permission, for validation, for a savior. But a person who remembers who they are becomes dangerous, because they can't be sold a false dream. They don't need constant approval. They don't fit in boxes. They stop playing by rules written to keep them small. Philosophers throughout history warned us, from Diogenes to Kierkegaard to Audre Lorde, the self-aware individual threatens the systems built on conformity, and so everything around you subtly tells you don't look within, just fit in. But what if rebellion isn't loud? What if the greatest rebellion is wholeness? There's one more thing that keeps us from reclaiming ourselves, a belief many of us carry in silence, that we're too much, too intense, too sensitive, too curious, too opinionated, too quiet, too weird. So we shrink, we tone ourselves down, we censor our joy, our grief, our brilliance. But what if you were never too much? What if the room was just too small? The truth is, the world doesn't need a muted version of you. It doesn't need more polished personas or obedient clones. It needs people who are real, people who are alive. Because when you give yourself permission to be fully you, you give others permission too. Self-remembering isn't selfish, it's contagious. You become a lighthouse for the lost, a reminder that authenticity is possible, that wholeness isn't a luxury, it's our birthright. So I'll ask you again, where have you abandoned yourself? In what relationships? In what dreams? In what daily compromises? And more importantly, what would it look like to return? Not all at once, but moment by moment, with each honest word, with each boundary honored, with each breath taken not to perform but to be. Coming home isn't a destination, it's a lifelong practice. But the moment you choose it, the path begins to appear beneath your feet. Here's a strange truth. Most people aren't afraid of being alone. They're afraid of what they hear in silence. Because when the noise of the world fades, your inner voice gets louder. The voice that says, this isn't working. The one that whispers, you were meant for more. But we drown it out, through busyness, entertainment, even constant productivity. Because solitude, real solitude, is like a mirror, and mirrors don't lie. They show you your contradictions, your illusions, your longing, but they also show you something else. They show you that beneath the fractured self, there's still a whole one waiting, still breathing, still intact, still sacred. Solitude is not the absence of connection. It's the space where real connection begins, when you can sit with yourself, without needing to be fixed, distracted, or praised. You meet your truest companion, and that meeting changes everything. Philosophy teaches us many paradoxes, but none more beautiful than this. You must remember who you are, in order to become who you're meant to be. It sounds contradictory, but it isn't. Because self-remembering isn't about returning to a fixed identity. It's not nostalgia for a perfect past. It's about remembering the essence, the core flame you were born with, and letting it evolve freely. You are not a statue to be admired. You are a river, changing, flowing, carving out new paths as you move through life. Becoming yourself is not about going backward or staying still. It's about integrating what was forgotten, so that what is possible can finally emerge. And you will emerge, not as the version others wanted you to be, but as someone unshaped by fear, unburdened by shame, unapologetically whole. So what now? What do you do with all of this? You begin simply. You pause before you say yes to things that make you feel small. You pay attention to the things that bring your soul alive. You notice where you betray your truth to keep the peace. And then you start choosing differently. Not loudly, not recklessly, but deliberately. This is a quiet revolution. No banners, no applause, just a steady return to yourself. One choice at a time. You won't always get it right. You'll forget again. You'll fall asleep again. But each time you remember, you wake up a little deeper. You come home a little stronger. And the world feels a little less like a stage and a little more like a place you truly belong. There is a language we are all born knowing. Before words, before expectations, before rules, it speaks through all, through wonder, through instinct. It's the language of truth, of alignment, of authenticity. But over time that language gets overwritten by scripts we didn't write, roles we didn't choose. You were told to be agreeable instead of honest, productive instead of present, perfect instead of real. And slowly the inner voice, the one that speaks this ancient language, fell silent, but it never disappeared. It's still there. In the quiet envy you feel when someone lives boldly. In the ache in your chest when you hear a song that stirs something ancient. In the calm that washes over you when you do something without needing to be good at it. That's your original language trying to speak again. Trying to remind you who you were, before the world told you who to be. Every now and then something happens that breaks the trance. A heartbreak, a loss, a moment of overwhelming beauty. Something that shakes you awake, even for a second, and reminds you, you are more than your obligations, more than your trauma, more than the person you perform as. You are something raw, something radiant. You carry within you the memory of fire, not a destructive fire, but a sacred one. The fire of presence, of courage, of knowing. The fire that warms, not burns. That fire has always been with you. You don't need to go out and find it. You just need to stop abandoning it. So what does it really mean to remember yourself? It doesn't mean clinging to some idealized version of who you used to be. It means reclaiming the part of you that was never lost, only ignored. It means forgiving the versions of yourself that betrayed your truth just to survive. It means choosing presence over performance, truth over comfort. It means becoming intimate with your own aliveness. To remember yourself is not to go backward. It's to come back into alignment with your values, your voice, your vision. And from that place, life becomes something else entirely. It becomes sacred again. Because now, you are not just existing. You are living with intention. And maybe, just maybe, you'll begin to see, you were never really lost. You were just waiting for the right moment to remember. We think of a pilgrimage as a journey outward to a sacred mountain, an ancient temple, a distant land. But the most profound pilgrimage is inward. It's the walk back through your own interior, through the corridors of unspoken dreams, through the rooms where your younger self still waits to be heard. It is not glamorous. There is no applause, just silence, honesty, and the willingness to confront everything you once buried. You'll meet your fears there, your regrets, your suppressed desires, and when you do, you'll realize they were never trying to ruin you. They were simply trying to protect you, in the only ways they knew how. But you are not that frightened child anymore. You don't have to abandon parts of yourself to be loved. You don't have to shrink to be safe. You can come home to the self you once exiled. Stillness is terrifying for those who have built their identity on movement. We fear what will surface when the noise dies down. But stillness isn't emptiness, it's revelation. It's where the real questions live. Who are you when no one's watching? What do you love when no one's expecting? What do you long for when there's no one left to impress? These are not comfortable questions, but they are necessary. Because without them you live your life as an echo, a reaction, a script. Stillness gives birth to clarity, and clarity gives you back your power. The power to stop performing and start being. We think revolutions have to be loud, explosive, violent. But some of the most radical revolutions happen quietly, when a person chooses to live with truth in a world addicted to illusion, when you stop chasing approval and start honoring your own rhythm, when you walk away from roles that suffocate your spirit, when you say, no more, not with anger, but with clarity. That is rebellion, that is revolution, and no one may notice, but you will, and you'll feel something shift inside you. Not a burst of pride, but a deep grounded knowing. You are finally on your own side. There comes a moment, if you're lucky, when the life you've built no longer fits, when your old dreams start to feel like cages, when your once precious goals now seem foreign, and it's terrifying, because you've worked so hard to get here. But what if here is no longer where you're meant to be? Letting go of that life isn't failure. It's evolution. We are not meant to live the same story forever. Sometimes growth means grieving the very things you once prayed for. It means recognizing when it's time to outgrow the version of you that the world loved, because you've fallen in love with something deeper, yourself. If you're hearing this and feeling behind, let this be your reminder. You are not late. You are not broken. You are simply unfolding in your own time. Growth doesn't follow a calendar. Healing doesn't obey deadlines, and self-discovery isn't a race, it's a remembering. Some paths take longer because they go deeper. Some seasons feel empty because they are planting something eternal. So if you're wandering, unsure, lost in the middle of a story you don't understand yet, trust this. You are exactly where you need to be. Not because it's comfortable, but because it's true. And truth will always bring you back to yourself. We've all been sold a myth that one day we'll arrive at clarity, at happiness, at peace, as if these are destinations with signs and gates. But there is no finish line, no mountaintop moment where everything suddenly makes sense. The truth is, most of life is lived in between, in the quiet, uncertain middle, in the half-formed thoughts, the half-healed wounds. And if you're waiting for everything to be perfect before you give yourself permission to live, you'll wait forever. What if the arrival you're chasing is already here? In this breath, this moment, this very heartbeat. What if you didn't need to be more, to be enough? We confuse wholeness with perfection. We think becoming whole means fixing every flaw, eliminating every wound, never feeling broken again. But wholeness is embracing all of it. It's not the absence of pain, it's the integration of it. It's holding your joy and your sorrow in the same hands, and not feeling like a fraud. It's knowing you can feel lost and still be worthy of love. It's realizing that healing is not about becoming a better version of yourself. It's about remembering you were never less to begin with. You are not a problem to solve. You are a story, wild, sacred, and still unfolding. In a world obsessed with greatness, maybe the bravest thing you can be is ordinary. Not famous, not flawless, not constantly optimized or admired, just fully alive, fully here. Drinking tea alone in the morning sun and feeling whole, laughing with a friend, knowing it means more than 1,000 followers, being kind when no one sees, loving when it's inconvenient, choosing slowness when the world demands speed. There is a quiet, unshakable power in embracing your ordinary life without apology, because that's where the real beauty lives, not in being exceptional, but in being real. There's a version of you that kept you safe, that got you through, that survived. But now, it's time to let them go, not in hatred, but in reverence, because they were never meant to be your future, only your bridge. And you are no longer the person who needs to hide, to shrink, to please in order to be loved. Let that version die. Let it burn like dry leaves in autumn, knowing that its death will nourish the soil for something new. You're not losing yourself. You're shedding what you were never meant to carry. This is not the end. It's your rebirth. And now, here you are. After the storm, after the wandering, after the pain you thought would never end, you didn't become someone else. You simply returned to who you've always been beneath the noise. The you before the world told you who to be. The you that still dances barefoot in your imagination. The you that knows peace is not found, it's remembered. You are not unfinished. You are not late. You are here. And that is enough. Somewhere inside you, beneath the dust of expectations and the ash of old identities, there is still a fire. It may flicker. It may burn low, but it has never gone out. And it never will, because that fire is you. Not the you others defined, not the one you tried to fix, but the one who was always worthy, always wild, always enough. So stoke it, feed it, trust it, let it guide you not toward a perfect life, but a true one. Because in the end what we're searching for isn't more, it's meaning, presence, and the quiet joy of coming home to ourselves.